I just want to try to bring the conversations that we've just had together and talk about how UK DRI can be used in slightly more granular fashion to characterize dementia cases going forward. The point I want to start with is a point that's been made by each of the three speakers before, and that is that dementia is not itself a disease, but it is a syndrome that has multiple causes. You've seen this pie chart in different ways, and it can be parsed even further. The important thing about this is that if we are to treat dementia, we have to treat the underlying diseases, and that really demands precision diagnosis of patients. And it's something that is an urgent agenda. Siddharthan highlighted this. Alzheimer's disease alone has a massive and growing burden for health systems worldwide. Here you see the projected growth as populations age. And what I want to emphasize is that those blue people are the early Alzheimer's disease patients. But actually, when do we want to treat this? Well, like hypertension and cardiovascular disease, we want to treat it before the disease is manifest, before people start to have cognitive problems, before it affects their work, social, and family life. Now, there are already tools in UK Biobank that are helping to make predictions of future neurodegenerative and dementing disorders. Siddharthan referred briefly to this. I just want to highlight a little bit of the data from Cynthia Sandor, an emerging leader in the UK DRI. Her study with UK Biobank data that was really extraordinary. What she did somewhat opportunistically is use some of the actigraph, the sort of watch-wearing movement data that was acquired about 7 years ago, 5 to 7 years ago in UK Biobank cohort. About 100,000 people were studied. They were followed for a period of a week, and from that, she was able to pull out acceleration of arm swing in the population. And if you look at the blue line, that's the versus the orange line, what one can see is there was a slower acceleration, that is to say longer time periods, higher line in those people who were diagnosed within a 7-year period relative to the healthy controls. This was very specific for Parkinson's disease, looking across a variety of disorders, including other Parkinsonian syndromes. You can see that the boxes, it's in the middle, for the orange, the prodrome, and the green, the disease, are lower. That is to say, the average acceleration is slower in the Parkinson's cases and the prodrome than rather specifically relative to other disorders. This highlights how the digital biomarkers can be used. Siddharthan referred to genetic risks. These are becoming increasingly powerful as algorithms improve and the density of genetic data rises. This is data from beautiful data from the Cardiff DRI group, showing differences in probability of developing dementia by a genetic risk score, the polygenic risk score. You can see that depending on the age group, which is highlighted as red, the population over 85, blue, the population over 65, and black, the general population, how genetics alone can provide relatively high probabilities of outcome, but not perfect, across these age groups so that one can begin to pre-screen using genetic data that is increasingly going to be available on everyone in the population. The interaction of genes with environment is clearly something that's critical for the onset of late-life dementias. And I just want to show you some top-line results that Eugene Duff and a group collaboration with UK DRI, Biogen, and UK Biobank have produced. This is unpublished data looking at the first at the the key biomarker of A beta 42 to 40 ratios, the amyloid protein in the plasma of these people, a simple blood test such as Siddharthan referred to in his later slides. And this is looking at the way it depends in the population on the ApoE, the high risk locus genotype for people in UK Biobank. The red, those people who carry the highest risk genotype, the ApoE4, they're homozygotes, and you can see that they have the lowest amyloid beta ratio, a sign of related to the development of Alzheimer's pathology in the brain, and those with the protective E2 allele and the more common E3 allele, shown as in blue, have the least reduction in this important fluid biomarker risk factor. The influence of environment on these factors is shown here in a really exciting study, opportunistically performed within UK Biobank during the pandemic, in which there was a matched case control group set up to allow people who were exposed to the SARS-CoV-2 virus or who had COVID to be compared against demographically matched people who had no evidence of such exposure by serology or clinical history. And one can see very clearly here, plotted as a function of age, that the A beta 42-40 ratio in the population exposed, shown in orange, is lower, that is to say, expressing higher biomarker risk than in the population that was not exposed in blue, illustrating how environmental factors, in this case infection, something that we've known about in part, but never been able to show so clearly before, can work with genes in order to enhance a risk. So these provide a high-level illustration of how UK Biobank is such a unique resource because of its size, the depth of the data, the duration of follow-up, the accessibility of the data to allow many researchers to turn their creativity to it, and of course the rapid growth with addition of additional data with every week. Now, we can enhance Biobank further, and there's a large group of us with UK DRI and others who have been discussing how to pull together a package that would allow low-cost, highly scalable, and diverse range of tests to improve our understanding of how to detect the disease at its earliest preclinical stages. One of the areas, for example, is in language, where language and speech, which can be enhanced easily. I just want to give you a dramatic illustration of this. This is not a UK Biobank study, but it's one of my favorite case histories from the recent annals of neurology, in which with John Hodges and Catherine Patterson led in a study of the famous novelist Dame Iris Murdoch, which tracked the progression towards preclinical Alzheimer's disease, which she sadly died of. The publications that they analyzed the grammar, word choice, and syntax in a variety of her publications. Her seminal book, The Sea, winner of the Booker Prize, the preceding novel, Under the Net, and her late novel, which was received with faint praise in the community, Jackson's Dilemma. And what you can see is when that book came out, it was within a year that she had evidence of substantial cognitive impairment. And if one looks at her word choice across the words per sentence, for example, across these three books, Under the Net and The Sea show relatively high variety of words, around 20. Jackson's Dilemma, it's smaller. The number of clauses per sentence, the complexity of her grammar plummeted to less than half by Jackson's dilemma. And if one looks at the range of different words used in these three books, plotted as a function of the number of words sampled, one sees in the triangles Jackson's dilemma, a slow rise forward, far fewer words being used, far fewer variety, far less variety in language relative to the other two. So what can UK Biobank now do? The goal is precision dementia outcomes prediction, to move the clock back in diagnosis. There's a plan that is developing, and we welcome input from researchers all over the country and internationally to refine the details of a repeat assessment visit for a volunteer population enriched by identifying themselves as having been told that they either have cognitive impairment or they have a diagnosis of dementia, to come in, receive a battery of tests that can be provided relatively quickly, we've shown in Biobank, a brain MRI, cognitive testing, physical measures, including gait, balance, and special senses, speech and language tests, biomarker assays such as have been described by my colleagues earlier, and then follow-up home digital monitoring. The impact of this is it would allow us to see the disease early, to understand gene, environment, and lifestyle contributions to dementia, to begin to deliver rapidly public health guidance, and in the longer term, to provide the substrate for enhanced ways of identifying the population we want to treat, enabling the development of treatments, and then finally allowing their approvals by regulators to get them to the patients where they're needed. Thank you.